Welcome, everyone. This afternoon, Wednesday, May 14th, 2025, to council time. Let's start with the roll call.
Counselor Young,
Here.
Counselor Belcott,
Present.
Counselor Fuentes,
Here.
Counselor Little,
Here.
and Chair Marshall.
Here.
Thank you.
Are there any amendments to the agenda?
And today.
Okay, thank you. We'll move right into public comments on agenda items only. People are trickling in. Michelle's getting the list. We'll be ready to go in a moment.
Carmen De Leon,
My name is Carmen De Leon, and I go by Mello De Leon too, in case you're wondering. So I'm talking about the minutes of the 7th, where there was a whole bunch of people here. I mean, the mayor's was here, the public was here, and I'm like, wow, that was nice, because public input is what we want. And like the man said, I'm just gonna go generally, the overall picture I got was the people want to save the land. They want to preserve the land's beauty. And like I've said before, let's make money off of it instead of destroying it for future generations. That's why I've talked about the tram, because it's beautiful. If you've ever been on a Salem State Fair, OHSU, you don't harm the land, you float over it and make money. That's why I said in direct competition with the Space Needle. I mean, instead of putting money into a deadbeat system, the light rail, let's put money into a system that can crank something back out. And I'm talking one good day, you'll get 1,000 rides, whereas they've been fudging the numbers over there at TriMet, or the light rail. They said there was 18,000 ridership. Maybe in the whole area of Portland, Multnomah County, because they ain't getting that on that Route 60. Give me a break. They calculated 500 trips round trip. That's 1,000 people a day. You really want to put 2 billion into that? How does that make sense when we already know that it's running off fumes, the bus system? They got 80 million in debt, lowest ridership in decades. Come on, man. You really want to pump money into a rock, a dead rock that ain't going to never give you some water back? And then they want to take the beautiful trees and well, actually, you guys voted that out, right? You said you're going to preserve the land. I think that's what the people want. And like the man said, let the people vote if you guys want to destroy it, because once you destroy it, you can't put it back, and we can't make no money off holes in the ground. But if you build pretty houses and give people a scenic view going over the river, seeing people on boats, looking through your toes, laughing at the people stuck on I-5 because you're just floating past them. I mean, am I the only one who wants to make money off our beautiful land that they preserved 5,000 acres? They said, we're not going to destroy. We're not going to screw that up. So, okay, let's not screw it up. Let's make money off of it. Anyways, the mayors agree. A lot of people agree. There is a way to make money off of the situation instead of just putting money into a bottomless pit hole. And unfortunately, I'm out of time. I didn't get to read all my stuff. Well, yeah, I guess. Oh, and the farms. Yeah, we need to boycott China and let our farm owners supply our food. We don't need China for nothing. They need us.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else? I think we-
Hector Hinosa,
Welcome.
Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon, counselors and staff and public. So regarding the old business, the minutes, there were several comments and some things that were listed on the minutes, but one thing that bothers me is that there were a lot of people here testifying to not delay the the work on the comp plan so we could meet the deadline. Now, I remember the last time we did a comp plan, there were 4. I disagreed with many of them. We passed the one that was probably the least harmful to the county. This time I've seen no plans at all. And there was maybe it was because there were 4 back then. We had public comment, and there was a tour actually that happened where the comp plans were introduced to all the public at various locations. I remember attending one in Hawkinson and then one here, but we don't seem to be having that this time, and we won't get any comp plan until November, December, January. And then how long do we have to comment and whether or not we agree with it or not? So it seems like we're way, way behind. And I guess it's too late to rescind the study, but what are we really going to face? So the other part about it is that I represent myself. Maybe I am a, what was the term? Special interest. Well, my special interest is that I like to eat and I like to drink water, clean water and good food. And it's better locally grown. So the point is that we are not really taking the input seriously from people that testify here. So I really would like some kind of acknowledgement that we do count for something. So thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Teresa Hardy.
Teresa Hardy speaking to the minutes. There were 2 people in the District 4 race, Matt Little and Joe Zimmerman. This was a very tight race with Councilor Little barely eking out a win. Both candidates ran heavily on protecting our agricultural land and Clark County's rural character. No matter who the district voted for, they voted for the preservation of our dwindling ag land. This means Councilor Little is misrepresenting the people of District 4 who voted for him and is failing to represent the interests of the district and, more importantly, the individuals and organizations in all of Clark County who support saving our ag land and our natural resources. Councilor Young disrespected those of us in the community who engage in local government to protect the public interest, equating us with private, for-profit, corporate interests with deep pockets who have the time to stand before you and to get special meetings. Attorneys attempt to misrepresent the counselors and the public time and again into being confused with the law. These attorneys do not bear the cost when you make poor decisions for this county, your staff, and we do. The statement about special interest last week is disrespectful to groups like LUEC and OWIs who represent marginalized people in our community and who the state intended to actually have a say in the comp plan decisions this time around. It's an insult to organizations like FOCC who represent thousands of regular people in the community, and to ACE, who is an alliance for many environmental groups, and the Sierra Club, who represents even more local constituents. This lack of recognition and acknowledgement to the power dynamics at play between powerful corporate and developers' interests and volunteer-run organizations who came here to advocate for the common good was disheartening. It is inaccurate and unfair to tally up personal testimony while ignoring those who had the time to write to council and ignore the fact that many people spoke on behalf of organizations representing lots of people. A letter was cherry-picked from one single person in Ridgefield who is misinformed about the consequences of an extended ag study, the impact it will have on our staff workload, the time commitment it will require for public engagement, the financial cost for all of us for the study and for being out of compliance. The reasons made by Belcott Little and Young to advocate this is not listening to the constituents and is putting us into an incredibly irresponsible and unnecessary trajectory. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all that signed up in the room. We do have one online.
Okay.
Caller, you've been sent a request to unmute. Please go ahead and do so and state your name for the comment. State your name for the record and go ahead with your comment.
Good afternoon, Kimberly Goheen Elbin. Well spoken to hold this council accountable. That's what we, the people, are here to do. And as you see on the minutes, there was plenty of people to do just that. I've always said that, you know, all glory goes to God. Me as a patriot, you know, fighting the good fight here, holding our government accountable, educating the people that need education as to we are the ones that govern you, has exploded, and we're going to make history here in Clark County, Washington, USA. There comes a time where a county becomes sustainable. Sustainability for what is a depleting resources here in Clark County, Washington. We want clean water, but all water is polluted around the world with forever chemicals. We want you to stop cutting our trees here. We want to be sustainable and sustain now. I'm going to ask again that we stop all growth, that we are happy with what we have. We don't allow developers to rape us any longer. We protect our farms. And so we have depleting resources here in Clark County, and you are going to protect them. And that's what we're talking about. So we, the people, insist that you help preserve ownership of farmlands, that you leave them all alone, and that those who struggle, give them their water rights back to Clark County farmers and leave them alone. We need our farm lands, and we don't want any agendas of Bill Gates, that's for damn sure. And China owners, that's going to go out too real soon with this new administration. So I want to get to also the agenda of, let me see here, of your new business with the quarterly financial review. So you had that on May 7th, I believe, also the same thing. And one of them depicts in your work session for environmental public health fees that you cut down staff, and that's what we're going to recommend. You're not going to take away public safety. That's priority number one. You're going to stop taxing the death out of people. You're going to ask Medicine Man Melnick for that $1 million that he had on our racist study. Ask him for that $1 million and put it to that, because either that or reduce staff. That's a must. Big government is what I'm all about fighting here right now, and you are big government, and you know it. So, and then you're going to go into executive session, and what is that about? It's going to be affecting national security. You're considering matters
Okay,
affecting
thank you. Your
national
time
security.
is up.
What the
Your
hell is that
time
about?
Your time is up. Thank you. One more. Okay.
Wendy Cleveland, you've been sent a request to unmute. Please go ahead with your comment.
Hi, Wendy Cleveland, Sierra Club. So this is regarding 4.1. I really did not want to have to feel like I needed to call in again today. I'm just so tired of this. Jamie Housley currently sits on the DEEB per the website. It says he's still a member of DEEB. He represents the BIA, and also Councilor District 1, I believe, is part of the BIA as well. DEEB exists to, and this is per their definition, review policy and code change and work with the Community Development and Public Works Department on process improvement. DEEB makes recommendations to the council. So Jamie Housley, Mr. Housley also represented Granite Construction. And last week he represented a landowner on the matter of the extended ag study. I'm just wondering if this is a conflict of interest. Has anybody checked this out? The county council long ago lifted the urban holding for the 179th project, and we know how that worked out. The builders paid no concurrency, and the county is, I think it's currently on the hook for $9+ million in the road concurrency just to make it drivable through that area now. And that's Ridgefield. And I'm wondering how much more this county intends to spend out of the taxpayer coffers for more projects for Ridgefield. I mean, and La Center, just the special interest projects. And I don't really believe that members of the community who keep taking their time to come here and speak to you and try to plead for better judgment, I don't think we're special interest groups. I think we're just members of the community that care enough to keep coming and trying to get you to do the right thing. So you know what the right thing to do is. Please try to do it. That's all.
Thank you.
That concludes public comment.
Okay, that concludes public comment. I would just say related to the comprehensive plan and public engagement, as I understand, we still plan to have community forums and discuss the options once they are developed. And I would agree that we have a lot of work to do.
Chair,
Yes.
the last comment by Wendy Cleveland about a conflict of interest between Mr. Housley, who represents a couple of cities and Granite Construction, I understand. Is that what she said?
I
And
can't
sits on
speak
deed?
to that.
Okay, well, can our county manager look into that? I'd be curious to know a little bit more about what Wendy Cleveland is referring to.
Yes, I can work with legal and we can look into that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to new business. Oh, old business. Here we go. 4.1, approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion of approval.
So moved.
Been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Okay, now on to new business. 5.1, 2025 first quarter financial review.
Good afternoon, Council. Mark Gasaway, Clark County Finance Director. I'm here today with Mitchell Kelly, our Reporting and Analysis Manager, and we're here to give you an update on the 2025 first quarter results, primarily with the general fund and some of our larger funds. We'll be coming back to you. Typically, we finish the first quarter before we have our prior year, our 2024 financial report finished. Right now, it's being audited. So by the end of the second quarter, we're hoping to have that audit results done and we'll be able to bring that back to you. I did want to mention that we just received the word from Government Finance Officers Association that our 2023 annual report received its Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. That'll be the 37th consecutive year that we've received that certification. And hopefully 2024 will be our 38th year. In addition, we received the same award for our PAFR report, which is the fourth year now?
Yeah.
Fourth year. And
Well,
so,
congratulations on that.
yeah,
Thank you very much.
We appreciate that. We just want council to know that we are doing our best to uphold the standards of financial reporting for our county. So I'll turn the time over to Mitchell for the third quarter, and then I'm going to spend a few minutes on another schedule that was disseminated to council within the last few weeks. So Mitchell.
Thank you. This is the first quarter. This was for January, February, and March of the financial activity, taking a review of the general fund. The first section here is reviewing the revenue that we received and comparing it to the prior year during the same period. Both property tax and sales tax revenue have increased slightly, with other revenues having pretty much stable as compared to prior years. a slight decline, but not significant enough really to even mention. And most of our property tax is received in either April and October. So this a number will increase as we continue throughout the year, and into the second quarter, we'll see a substantial increase in the property tax collected by general fund. Moving on down to the general fund expenses, we see that the salaries and benefits have spent about 25% of budgeted amounts. And then the supplies, services, and other charges have spent about 30% during the first quarter, which indicates that the salaries and benefits are pretty tight with what we've expended, or our budget has expended, and on track to be tight for the rest of the year. The salary, or the services, supplies, and other charges, there's the variance that is higher than the 25%, which would be what you would expect for the first quarter, is primarily due to one-time expenses that happen at the beginning of each year. So this first quarter is all of the one-time expenses that are incurred, and then it will even out as we continue throughout the year. Are there any questions about the general fund revenue or expenses?
Go ahead, Councilor Little.
Yeah, thank you. You said that the revenue hasn't changed since last year. You know, I was just curious, what does it normally match inflation, cost of living increases? This is a concern. I would assume that it's not keeping up with that.
The other revenue section, or are you talking about revenue in general?
This first chart where the numbers are the same between the 2 years.
So scrolling back up to the revenue section. There we
Yeah,
go.
that one.
So we do expect a slight increase in property tax and sales tax revenue. We'll talk about comparison to inflation in a next slide. Mark will
Oh,
be talking
great.
about more about that. The other revenue are things like fines and fees, or general fund received some transfers or things like that are a little bit harder to plan and budget. So for the first quarter, this is pretty, it's not surprising to see these numbers. We'll have more data as we continue on through the year and we collect more property tax and see how our sales tax is actually trending for the whole year. This first quarter is a little bit tricky to kind of compare year over year. But Mark, do you have anything else?
Yeah. Excuse me, I was just going to add, typically in a year, we would budget an increase in property tax between 2% and 3%. So if you look at right now, property tax is up 3.5%. So it's in that range of where we're at. And like Mitchell said, in the first quarter, you just don't have a lot of data points until you get that first April property tax collection. With sales tax in a year, we typically budget an increase of about 4.2%. So you can see for the first quarter, we're a little bit behind, but again, it's not in a range where we're too concerned yet. It's about where we've budgeted. So I think that's kind of what you were looking at. What do we expect?
That's
And
helpful.
so
Thank you.
these revenues are kind of in the realm of what we would expect to see for the first quarter.
Great. Any questions about the expenses for general fund? If not, we can move on to the next page, road fund. These two charts show the budgeted revenue, and the blue part is the actual revenue collected. And then on the other side is the actual expenses, and then the budgeted expenses. We have a substantial amount of revenue to collect and also amount of expenses to make during the year. The first quarter is a small revenue quarter for road fund. They receive property taxes as well. So they'll receive a substantial amount of their property tax in the next quarter that we'll see. And then also with the expenses, primarily they happen during the summer in the time periods where it's easier to do construction work outside. So that's why there's such a small amount of expended for the first quarter, but we'll see that in the next quarter that will increase substantially.
And I would just add with the road fund, one of the things that we've observed over the last couple of years is that road fund balance is building. It's It's, if you look at the comment where it says the estimated fourth quarter fund balance at almost $47 million. Well, right now, because we just recently had the property tax collections, it's almost $60 million. And so there's a significant amount of funds that have accumulated in there. So as you work with Public Works and their annual construction plan and their TIP, they need to be able to program in that funding to see that it gets spent down, because it's a very high balance right now. If you look at the monthly sheet that comes out, the monthly financial report that I believe gets circulated through the emails, you look at their April ending amount, which is when we started collecting property taxes, and it's significantly higher. It's almost $60 million now. So
What's the minimum fund balance on that account?
well, I don't believe we have a minimum fund balance policy currently for this account. I know we've been working on one,
Okay,
but I don't think we have a finalized one. But it's not $60 million.
great. Thank you.
And if I can, Mark, don't they, in their annual construction program and their TIP, they actually have projects earmarked for this funding? So it's not like the funding has increased, by $20 million. They actually have projects in the works that will spend it down.
Right. If you look through their programming, that's where they're to program in the use of this fund. So
Thank you. I just want to make sure council doesn't think that we're going to have a 60, 70,000 or $1 million fund balance. There actually is a intentional look at spending that down, and based on the programs that council has approved during the annual budget process. Thank you.
Thank you.
If-
Any other questions? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, just moving forward, just two more sections to cover. We have community development. We highlight this fund because general fund has over the years given a subsidy to the community development fund over every year at the end of the year. In prior years, it's been well over $1 million, and there was some updates to the permit fees that council approved in prior year. So we're anticipating that this general fund transfer is going to be substantially less at the end of this year. And as we continue to review the expenses and the revenue that come into that community development fund, we'll continue to estimate what the general fund subsidy will be for 1011 the community development activities. However, because council approved the fee increases, we are anticipating a significant reduction in that transfer from general fund.
And I just, again, continue to add, this will never go to zero, because there's actual services that general fund departments actually receive from community development for permitting and things like that. So it'll never go to zero. But if you were to look at this, say in years past, that transfer would be well over $1 million. And so this year, we're looking at it, as Mitchell said, it's going to be significantly lower than what it has been. And that's due to the fees for wetland and habitat, and those areas will now be cost recovery rather than subsidized through the general fund. So.
Great. And then the last part we just wanted to highlight is the public safety sales tax. This was a sales tax that was approved by voters in prior years, and we are on track to spend and receive exactly what we have anticipated. The budget is right in line with what the actual amount received is right in line with what we have budgeted for our revenues and also for our expenses. And that is the first quarter report. I'll pass it over to Mark to talk about a request that we had from council in our prior quarter.
And if I could just jump in before we transition really quick, I did want to clarify that the road fund actually does have a minimum fund balance policy. And it was incorporated in last year's budget process as well. And it's based on various factors. So I can forward that to council for information, and we can look at last year's numbers for what that is. So I just wanted to clarify there is a fund balance policy there.
Great, thank you.
Great. So at our last quarterly report, council asked us to provide some additional information, and that's what this schedule is for. It's and let me kind of walk you through it, because I think when you have a schedule like this, it kind of tells a story, and I want to help explain what the information that you're receiving. So, and I think also it's really an appropriate time to talk about this because in our next section, we're going to be talking about the budgeting. So it kind of sets the table a little bit for going into the 2026 budget process. So this is focused on the general fund. And I want to make sure that we're only talking about the general fund on this schedule. And let me kind of explain to you the components that are on this schedule. So it's a 10-year history, and these are actual revenues and expenditures that we've received or expended out of the general fund. The first section across the top, it's going to show you what the inflation rate was or what the consumer price index indicated over that 10-year period. So I've kind of highlighted the year-to-year changes underneath as a percentage. And then out at the end where it says 10-year change, you can see that over that 10-year period, the consumer price index, it increased 34.22%. So that's just kind of some context, right? I want to make sure you have the context of what we're talking about here. The second section is the base revenues that we receive in the general fund. And those are property taxes, sales taxes, and then we have a myriad of other types of charges that we receive. And if you look at the total on that, you're going to see the total of these are base revenues. We also have some other revenues that we receive in the general fund that are associated with grants or interest income, some other types of, but they're really not a base revenue. They're really a very variable revenue. So if you look at the growth rate for example, for our property taxes, so you have to go down just a little bit. No, that other way, sorry. Go back up. Yeah, right there. Thank you. To our property taxes. So you can see over the 10-year period, our property taxes have grown at 29.75%, which is just about 5 percentage points less than inflation. So our property taxes have not kept pace with inflation. If you look at the next section down, our sales tax, you can see that they've grown at almost 90%. So they have grown significantly. And then the revenues in the next section have either grown minimally or declined. And overall, our revenues, these base revenues in the general fund, are about the same, just under where our inflation rate has been. So revenue overall has kind of kept pace with inflation. So let's go down to the next section on expenditures. So in our expenditures, these are divided into categories, the way we report them in our financial statements. General government, public safety, and then other categories. I just want to emphasize that general government, we include in general government things like our courts and our clerk. Public safety is primarily just law enforcement. Okay, so it's a little bit different definition. It's not law and justice, it's public safety is just law enforcement. So you can see the increases in those areas over the years. And I have some notes in here to explain why there's some either large increases or decreases. For example, footnote number 4, that blue block, those were our COVID pandemic years. And we intentionally held down our expense growth because we weren't sure what was going to happen during that time period. So you can see that actually from 2019 to 2020, we had a decrease in our expenses. Okay. And then in 2021, there's a small increase. 2022, you can see that that's our Baker Tilly, the beginning of our Baker Tilly project, where you see a larger growth in some of our expenses. Keep in mind that the expenses in the general fund are primarily salary and benefits. This is where we have most of our workforce in the general fund, as far as courts, as far as our public safety, as far as our administrative staff. So the majority of our expenses in the general fund are staffing.
I wonder if we could just take a moment
Oh.
to explain Baker Tilly for the new counselors that
Sure.
might not be familiar with that.
Sure. In 2020, I believe is when we started the project. We hired a firm called Baker Tilly to do an evaluation of our salaries, and we're not kind of in the benefit stage of that now, but our salaries primarily. And so if you were to look at our positions compared to other positions through comparative organizations, and were we comparable? What we found out is that in a lot of cases, we were below market. And during that time, we were also struggling to hire and also to retain employees. And so as a result of the study, there were adjustments made to the salary scale within the county. And so that's really what when I refer to Baker Tilly, it was the adjustment of those salary or the salary scale within the county.
Mark, I'm going to add
Amber
some-
can't help herself. Go ahead, Amber.
I'm going to add something to this for Counselor Fuentes and Counselor Little. So Baker Tilly Council sets compensation philosophy. So before we went into Baker Tilly, we were about 8% below market is where we were historically, because that was how we were set up. We also had 6 comparables. We went from 6 to 18, I believe, off the top of my head, to expand to the cities and other jurisdictions that we reviewed and surveyed our leadership throughout the county that they were losing staff to. So I just wanted to give that little context to that. And there was a committee that was ran by the sheriff, myself, and Treasurer Topper, who spearheaded it for the elected side. So we looked at the entire organization. It was a big, lengthy study and look, but it got us to market, and that's what council voted on, was to come to market. So we're flat with market, and that's where our compensation philosophy is.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to let council know, if you have any questions anytime, just stop me. I mean, council time, this can be a discussion. It's not a work session. It's not a presentation. So just put your hand up and stop me. One of the things I wanted to point out, if you look at our expense growth as a whole, you'll see that, and that's that total line there. Over the 10 years, it's been 37%. Now, if you recall, up at the top, our CPI has also grown about 34%. So our expenses have grown slightly more than CPI. But there's a very good reason for that. And I'm going to show you that on our next line down. If you could scroll down one more line. Thank you. This is our population growth over that 10-year period. So over the 10-year period, our county population has grown at 19%. So one of the things that add to the expense growth is not just the inflation, but also the services that are required to be provided. And if you were to add the two together, the 34% CPI plus the population growth, I would suggest that we're not keeping pace because we haven't been able to add the staff necessary to keep the service levels where they need to be. And so that's been the challenge within the general fund. How do we provide enough resources so that we can provide the services that are required? And again, the general fund is very large, and there's a lot of services that are being provided to the citizens. How do we deal with that pressure to not add staff, but service a growing population?
Mark, can I add
So-
something for council here?
Yes.
I think another piece to talk about when we talk about law and justice is some of it's not service delivery as it is a requirement by the Constitution. And so when we look at those elements that we have to maintain versus a service delivery or how fast something goes through the court system, that I want to make sure we're looking at it from constitutional requirement and how it goes through the system, and then also the combination of the service deliveries that we have in the general fund.
Yeah.
Mark.
So again, there's a lot of data on this schedule. There's a lot of information on there. So I'm going to try and, in my mind, boil it down into 3 points that I would like council to kind of take into consideration. These are Finance Director Mark Gasaway's points. There are other points as well, but these are the 3 that I would emphasize. So if you were to look at each year individually, the categorized expenditures exceed the base revenues. So we've talked about structural deficit over a period of time. And you're probably asking the question, well, if we've had this issue for 10 years, how is this fund remaining solvent? Well, I did refer to other revenues that we've been using that are less predictable, like interest income or grant revenue. That's what we've been using to make sure that we've been staying in a balanced position. However, as I've mentioned previously, last year we were very close. Our operating revenues were about $2.5 million more than our operating expenses. This year, I don't anticipate that that will happen. I think that this will be the first year that we've ever had an operating deficit. So I want you to take that in consideration. We've been looking at this for a long time. It's been manifest in different areas, but we've been able to balance relying on some of these other revenue sources. The second thing I'd ask you to remember is that although our base revenue, it's slightly behind inflation. So if you recall, inflation was 34%, our base revenue was 33%. And maybe you could scroll back up to this. If it weren't for the dramatic increase in sales tax, we would have been having to deal with this issue a long time ago. Sales tax increased over that 10-year period almost 90%, which again, sales tax went from, I believe it was, less than 30% of our general fund revenue to 35%. And it's not as stable as a revenue source as our property taxes. It's not as predictable. And as Mitchell just showed you, we can't anticipate that kind of growth going forward. If you were to look at it today for 2025, we're at maybe 1% growth. So continuing to rely on or let the sales tax kind of bail us out is going to be very difficult. I just don't see it growing. If we get to the 4%, which we've budgeted, the growth we budgeted, that is a long-term trend. Maybe we can get to the 4%, but we're not going to have the 8 or 10% growth years that we've had in the past. It's just not going to happen. We just won't have that available.
And that jump in sales tax, was that as a result of being able to capture online sales?
That is absolutely one piece of it. You look at the behaviors that started changing in the 2021 timeframe. A lot of it had to do with online shopping.
COVID, yeah.
7 or 8 years ago, they streamlined the sales tax where it became destination based. So all of these things have contributed to the fact that we were able to benefit from it during this 10-year time period. But we're not going to see those kind of changes going forward unless we have some huge retail boom, which I don't see happening in the county. So we will have growth. I mean, we could have small growth. And again, we've budgeted about 4% growth, but we're not going to have the ability to make up. If you look at the loss that we've had or the stagnant that we've had in our other areas, the other revenues used to provide about 30% of our general fund revenue, and now it's down to 22%. It's just, they're not growing. They're just not keeping pace. So you have, property taxes, about the same as our CPI. Sales tax is now going to be below that, and our other revenues just aren't growing.
Mark, can I add a quick little point to that as well? The other revenues as in that bracket is a lot of the court fees and fines over the last 5 to 10 years. That's decreased in the state of Washington as a whole dramatically. That criminal process case fees are not allowed. You have to look at someone's ability to pay in the state. So that's not charged anymore. And also filing fees are reduced. So that was a big area that we saw decrease over the time, as well as probation fees and fines based on indigency as well.
Absolutely.
Mark?
Yes.
Or Chair? Mark, what are other taxes?
Other taxes. Mm-hmm. So we have, there's various taxes like marijuana tax is one example. There's just other things that aren't part of sales tax that we receive. And so, I mean, I could give you a list. of those. I don't have it with me right now, but I can get you the detail of all 300 revenues in the general fund. So, yeah, but that's an example. The marijuana excise tax is an example of other taxes. There's gambling taxes that we get on punch cards and things like that. So there's just other things that come through.
So just to, not to follow up on that, but on the sales and use tax column, I don't remember where I read this recently. Consumer confidence is at an all-time low. And so we should expect to see a potential decline, a significant decline in sales tax over the next couple of quarters.
Yeah, and I don't know that it will decline. I just don't think it will grow.
Okay.
I mean, it may stay level.
Mhm.
We may have small increases. I mean, people still have to buy things, but it may be that you're not going to see the 10% growth that if you look on here, you can see years, 2020 was almost 18% growth. And we're just not going to see that.
There is a sentiment out in the public that things are going to get even more expensive. So there may be some purchases
Sure.
in advance of things getting even more expensive.
Sure. And to some extent, higher prices help sales tax because you're paying more tax on higher prices. But, there's a curve somewhere that says prices, go too high, purchasing drops off. So, and a lot of the sales tax in our county is based on construction. At one point, we could be as high as 35% of our sales tax comes from construction. And right now construction is kind of in a lull. I mean, both housing and commercial, we're not seeing as much construction activity as we've seen in prior years. And so that's a big contributor to the sales tax that the county receives. So.
But I will also add, though, we are not seeing a dip in any of the permits and for new construction and new home construction stuff. We have not seen any decline yet in our permit center. The city has, but the county has not yet.
And to Kathleen's point, we do get a portion of our sales tax from the city. 15% of the sales tax that they receive, we receive. So when they see numbers going down, that reduces what we've been able to receive. So the third point, I talked about the first two. The third point is, so expenditures, as I mentioned, in the base expenditures have exceeded the base revenues in each of these years, and we've been able to make up the difference. Thankfully, we've had the sales tax to kind of buffer that a little bit, but we've been able to make up the difference from less predictable revenue sources, including grants and interest income and some of those things. We've been very fortunate the last 2 years, and we will be this year, that interest rates have been higher and we've been able to collect more income. Of course, people don't like high interest rates, and they're starting to come back down a little bit because they can, borrow money more cheaply. So there's some trade-offs there. We have had high cash balances, which have helped us generate more interest income, but that's not a stable revenue stream that we can depend on in the future to help balance out some of these deficit years. So again, I just want, council know that we are applying all the resources that we have available to keep this fund solvent. We have used a lot of the, ancillary funds, for example, public safety sales tax, to add staffing without impacting the general fund. But as you know, public safety sales tax is now pretty well tapped out. We don't have the ability to add more staff to that. We've used mental health sales tax to also add in areas that we've been able to do that are applicable to that fund. And we've been very strategic about how staff has been added in the general fund. And it's primarily, as Amber mentioned, it's primarily been in law and justice areas. For example, adding judges or adding staffing to the jail, or those areas. It's been very strategic. And will continue to be strategic in how staffing is added. But the pressures that are on the general fund and the relief valves available just are not going to be there like we've been able to have in the past. We've just used up a lot of the ability. And again, that's kind of the story that this is telling me. Again, this schedule is meant to give you information, provide you data that you've been looking for. And I'm trying to help, explain what I see that this data is telling us. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
So thank you very much. I had a lot of troubles articulating what I was looking for in this, and you nailed it almost perfectly. So I think this is a fantastic tool for us to use to judge. It's not perfect because there's still all these little anomalies and exceptions here and there. And I know you've done your best to try to, keep this kind of holistic and try to pull out some of those anomalies. Couple things. One is if I think that we should review this document every year. I think this is a good tool for us to use to compare, especially when we're looking at taking 1% or not. I think that's important. So one thing I would hope that we could add on there, and I think I can probably see just by looking at the numbers themselves, but it would be helpful to know which of these years the council elected to take the 1%. And then also you said it a couple times during our meeting, but I think if you could add the population total increase down there at the bottom, the 19%. Each year it's shown there, but it's the total cumulative is missing on there.
Oh, so you just the number increasing rather than just the percentage year-over-year growth? Is that what you're asking?
The population growth.
It got cut off on we only have one page, you have two, and so it got cut off.
Oh. Oh yeah. What is that last one there?
The one that you printed has it. There it is.
Oh, that is on there. Okay, it's on the lower. Okay, so that is on there. Perfect. But I think it illustrates a point, and you mentioned it. So in theory, our revenues are close to inflation, and most people would stop at that and think, oh, things are fine. But then there are two things that happen that our revenue should increase more than just simply inflation. And that is, one is new mandates, new services that we're expected to provide. If we don't increase revenue beyond inflation to cover those new positions or those new services that we're providing, we have to remove from somewhere else in order to fund those new services. The second thing is the population growth. I mean, right off the bat, our revenue should be 20% more than inflation if we've had 20% growth in population or somewhere. Probably not realistically 1-for-1, but there's no question that our revenues should be outpacing inflation to cover all the new people that are coming into the county.
Right. And I guess to your point, we've had a lot of discussion on the Law and Justice Council about, our officers per thousand. And if you look at just this increase over the 10 years, that's 80,000 new residents. That would be an indicator, how many officers have we had have we been able to increase in that time period? And these expenses, for the large part, just represent the cost of maintaining the existing workforce, but we still have to support that increase in population. And that happens throughout all of the services we provide, whether it's the sheriff or the courts or, the auditor's office. Elections, we know in elections, they've experienced a huge increase in voter registration. And so all of those services have to be provided just because the population increases. So to your point, that's exactly what I'm trying to drive here. We have kept pace with inflation to some respect, but the demand for services is outpacing that revenue growth.
Yep.
Mark,
And
real
so
quick.
we have things happening like the inability to increase sheriff's deputies.
Or jail staffing.
Jail
I would
space. Yep.
just call out though, and I think it's important in that number to say where people are coming. So like if we are adding sheriff's deputies, that's in the unincorporated or Hazeldale area for now. But I think that number, is it in the city or is it?
This is countywide. You're right.
or is it an incorporated? So then I think to your point, Counselor Young, of looking at it from a sheriff's deputy, Mark saying, you know, is 80,000 people. Well, even if we increase 40 in the unincorporated areas, what does that mean for our services that we're having to provide versus what the city has to provide? So I think that is a good indicator, but I would take it one step further so we can kind of extract that out a little bit more for the data point.
Yeah, and to your point, Amber, a lot of services are unincorporated versus incorporated, but a lot are regional. They're countywide. You know, the jail is a countywide service. Elections are it's a countywide service. So it doesn't matter whether the growth is in the city of Vancouver or the city of Ridgefield or unincorporated. We still have to provide those services.
Councillor Belcott has her hand up. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And we also have to remember we're in a unique situation being in Southwest Washington with the sales tax leakage issue that also like Spokane has the same issue with Idaho being on the close to the border. I know in WASC meetings, we've had numerous discussions about people going over to Idaho just to go to the dump because of the fees and regulations on the Washington side that are not an issue in Idaho. So they have the same issue that we do. We lose a lot of revenue. And I can't remember, Mark, didn't you at one time, maybe I could be wrong, didn't you have something that you shared with us that was kind of a rough estimate of tax sales tax leakage at one time?
I did, Counselor. I've calculated the amount of sales tax per capita versus the average in the state of Washington. And that's the best indicator of how Clark County is doing versus the rest of the state. And I believe the last calculation I did, we were somewhere between, the unincorporated area was somewhere between $4 and $6 million under the sales tax per capita. And the county as a whole was somewhere between maybe, I think it was 10 million to 12 million, somewhere in that range. So not only is the county receiving less, but the cities as well. And so if we look at that, you know, 4 to 6 million, that would fund a lot of the operating deficit that we currently have. If we had that additional sales tax revenue, or if we were on par with the other counties in the state of Washington, because they have those resources available to fund the same services we're required to fund. And
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I recall that there had been in the past sometimes communications with our state legislature, if there's any ways to correct for that. And one of the comebacks often was, well, if you take your 1%, we might talk about it. So it's good to be seeing all of this right now, because when we come to the end of the year and all of the budget information, this context that you're providing is really helpful. So thank you.
Sure. Just a couple last things too is I don't know if there's a way, just like for full transparency, could you build or make up like a white paper on this, you know, to kind of summarize our discussion and to, you know, describe the document? And I'd love to see this on our website. That's a yellow paper.
I know. I can print these up. These are just my notes.
Yeah,
If
that
you'd
would
like
be
that.
great. And I would love to see kind of some of the information that you excluded out for, like, you know, anomaly reason, and just kind of a brief explanation of why you pulled them out.
Okay.
Just for transparency purposes. But I think this is a tool that we should make available right on the website. People should see this and try to get to it. Because, I mean, there is not a single person from the public here sitting here listening to this information. We need to get this to the voters so that they can understand the situation.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor. Oh, go ahead, County Manager.
Yeah, I know Councillor Young had brought up the 1% and maybe including that somewhere on here, but it might, because I know in the budget hearing, I did share that council's taken it 6 out of 12 years, which resulted in $37.5 million less revenue, but maybe add a line item on here. So it's also transparent on that revenue, as Councillor Young suggested earlier as well.
I'll add that.
Chair?
I'll add that.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, and just to add to that, yeah, if it could just be a separate line under property taxes that says the amount that is attributable to the 1%, that would be really helpful. And then also maybe a note that talks about the sales tax leakage and just the estimates that you described. That would be really helpful footnote.
Okay, this is great that everyone wants so much information and you're making it digestible. Anything else?
No.
Chair, I do want to, if I can, just go back to the road fund really quick before we close this agenda item, if council's okay with that.
Absolutely.
Okay, and staff, can I share my screen?
Yes.
Does it automatically just take over when I do it? We'll find out.
Go for it. Yeah, it'll just take over. There you go.
Okay, can you see the forecast on your screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this forecast was what was presented during the 2025 budget process. So I did just want to show and make sure that council sees that, does this capture the revenues, the expenses that includes the tip in here that you can see with the blue, the fund balance, the projected ending fund balance. This is the fund balance reserve or fund balance policy, which is about 12 million for 2025. And as you can actually see, we're not increasing over year. We're actually decreasing on the available fund balance over year over year through 2030. We're down to 1.8 million. This does fluctuate every year because of construction. Sometimes it's delayed. Sometimes there's other things that come up or change in priorities. So this does get presented to council a couple times a year with the budget process, but I just wanted to share that fund balance policy result right there. And we have the Word document as well, but sometimes that's a little hard to follow because there's a lot of nuances in there, but this actually puts it out there. And then you, like I said, you can see the ending fund balance before the minimum fund balance policy kicks in and then there. So we actually have it all allocated. It is decreasing year over year to pay for those projects. So thank you. I just wanted to make sure and close that loop with council.
Great, thanks. It's good to look at that. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? Councillor Young, if you were in any way part of a catalyst to make all this information come together and be presented to us, thank you for that.
They did the work. Excellent work. Thank you.
It's important to ask the questions. Okay. Thank you both. So I think that moves us on to 5.2, 2026 annual budget process.
Yes, thank you, council. So I wanted to provide a little update on our general fund, just an overview, and then also talk about the 2026 annual budget process. So as we ended 2024 in the 2025 budget hearing, we did show that we had a projected fund balance available in 2026 with a negative almost $10.5 million and an operating deficit of 12.5. So just a reminder, the operating deficit is simply the ongoing expenses exceeding ongoing revenues. As Mark and his team have finished up year end of 2024, we always have a little bit of savings in there. So there's some adjustments that are being made. One is the year-end savings. It was about $2.5 million. That was for 2024. Historically, this was $5 to $6 million. So what that means mostly is that we're actually filling positions. In the past, and that's probably due to Baker Tilly, it's due to a lot of factors. In the past, we had the larger amount because we had more vacancies. So that's more where that savings come from. There was a reduction in some of the costs that were set aside for ARPA projects. We had budgeted 23 million. There's been some savings in those projects of about 4 million. So that will fall back as a one-time positive to our fund balance. Additional ARPA recovery funding, about 3.5 million. And then if council remembers, last year we did do some capital bonding internally for our jail project. And what that did is allowed us to borrow internally paying it back through REIT, and reallocated that that financial liability out of general fund. So that puts the money back in there. One of the pieces to that, there's about 6.3 million that did not get carried forward into the 2025 budget. So we're adding that back in as that liability now is with REIT. What that means is instead of the negative just over 10 million, we have about 6.5 million available for one-time fund balance. Our operating deficit did increase up to $14 million annually as well. I will share the finance team, and I'll just name them again. It's our budget director, our deputy county manager, finance director, deputy treasurer, and our HR director. We are continuing to evaluate all the revenue streams that are coming into the county, including interest earnings, as Mark just shared. We're evaluating potential new revenue streams, and I know we've had some discussions with council with public safety sales tax, levy lid lift, the new legislation with the criminal justice tax. So we're looking at all revenue streams that would be available to the county. We're continuing to review the fee structures, much like we did with the community development fund last year, which is bringing down that transfer from general fund. We also did with, and council's already approved the park fee review. We're looking at jail bookings, court fees, alarm fees. There's a lot of fees that we've had in the county that haven't been updated in many years. So the goal is to achieve full cost recovery where we can. And then we're also looking at how do we calculate charges across departments and offices. And I know Mark mentioned this with the community development fund, our human resources, budget, IT, there's some of our central services that support all departments. So there is a calculation in which those charges are allocated to all departments. So we are looking at that. I know our departments and offices are also looking at, okay, what are we doing with our within funds or within departments that we can maybe charge to another fund that doesn't need to be charged to general fund, just to really try to maximize our ability to be financially sustainable. So with the 2026 budget process, so we're just now starting that process. Just as a quick reminder, departments and offices submit, they're called decision packages, which is their budget request. There are many requests that come through. This is their opportunity, though, to also share what their needs are today in order to continue providing services and what do they anticipate they're going to need as well. And as you've heard, we have not grown, even though our population has grown. We have not grown as a county, as an organization, and which has been allowing us to, really tiptoe through and squeak by every year with these one-time savings to get us balanced. So after consultation with the finance team, what is being recommended and what I'm recommending to council is for the 2026 budget process for general fund, that any new request that a department or office submits must have a revenue stream tied to that, or it must be mandated by law, like an unfunded mandate. This provides efficiency for our staff that have to put through all the requests. It also helps on the review end too. Last year we had between 450 and 500 pages that we are reading, we're analyzing. The budget office has to double check all the financials. And then with that said, I don't want to lose the opportunity for them to provide that information to you on what their needs are. So have the departments and electeds to articulate their needs in an executive summary or a memo that would be presented directly to council so that they can talk directly with you and still share their needs. I will say I did talk to all the separate electeds and I talked to the courts. At least one of the electeds, they really treasure the ability to have that discussion through the budget process and through a decision proposals that they're submitting. So I did tell them I would share that with you. I personally think though that the executive summary still has that ability to get in front of you. This also does not prohibit council from making amendments on the budget. So that is still in place for council's decision. For public safety sales tax, because we have maximized that fund and in compliance with our minimum fund balance, the recommendation is that there's no new request unless we were to go out for a new public safety sales tax initiative. Mental health sales tax, the advisory board met a few weeks ago, and they have allocated and committed 2.1 million in one-time funding for the bridge shelter per council's direction. And they are looking at allocating no more than 1.5 million for ongoing salary services and programs for that. And then the recommendation for all other funds like road fund, building and code, and others would proceed through the normal budget process. I will take a pause there, and I've got Emily on here from the budget as well. If you guys have any questions, feedback, really looking for that direction for the 2026 budget process so that we can communicate that out to all of our departments and offices so that they can, you know, some of them have already started working on their request, but just so that we can get that solidified for them and that clarity provided.
Thank you. Are there questions from council? So if you could just maybe simply state how the practice is going to be different from previous years.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the pro and con, so we can better understand that.
Yes, it is simply for general fund. Only new requests that would be submitted would have a revenue already identified to pay for it, or it's mandated by law. And I do want to add, I'm grateful for the work that's been done to find the one time, because we're not recommending any cuts at this time. Which is not what it looked like last year. So these one-time savings does provide some additional time, because when we look at our general fund and we look at policy direction, as you know, noted, 75% of that's law and justice. And so there's going to be tougher policy discussions, you know, but it buys us time to continue to have those discussions, find the other revenue streams that might be able to help address those needs, address the general fund deficit as well. And we will continue to monitor this monthly. And if something, you know, happens that we need to pivot, we'll be ready to pivot as well.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councilor Young.
Thank you, Chair. Just one quick comment. I think it's important to note that we are only kicking the can down the road. It's important to remember that. If there are not new funding mechanisms that come to play, there will be cuts that are coming in the future because we cannot sustain it. We have just bought ourselves some additional time to try to identify revenues that we can use to pay for the services that are needed. But I just think it's really important to point that out, that yes, we don't have to make any cuts this year, but in order to maintain the same level of services that we're providing, we will need to identify some new sources of revenue, or we will need to make some cuts in the coming years to balance the budget.
Yes, completely agree. And we're still evaluating the outcome of the legislative session. And I do think that there are some opportunities in there that will increase our revenue if council so chooses. So we will be bringing that back to you within the next few months.
Any other thoughts or advice or guidance from the council? Okay, I guess that, you know, only looking at one-time requests or requests that have funds tied to them makes perfect sense. I guess for me, I know there's been a lot of talk at Law and Justice. I feel like I have a pretty clear understanding of the needs there, but just generally overall, and I think last year we had, 100 requests, or there were 100 new positions requested. I remember there was a phenomenal number that we hadn't seen before. So I'm not sure how best the council can understand really more holistically what the needs are and if we're making the right priorities. Maybe we don't have much flexibility. It doesn't sound like we have much flexibility this year, but just going forward, how can we as the policymakers make the best decisions in terms of prioritizing? And I think in part it's that we better understand what the needs are among the departments and in the community. Just a editorial comment, I believe.
Yeah, and I think you'll still hear what those needs are through like an executive summary and direct dialogue with the elected officials and departments. But
Great,
yes,
thank-
and if we move forward with any sort of vote, like in November or early next year, that comes after the budget process, we can always do a budget supplemental to capture the revenue and expense authority to true that up. So there is we don't like doing, we want to be very intentional with supplemental budgets, but there is the opportunity if we have a change in the revenue and expenses.
Thank you. Any other comments? Thanks for that briefing. More to come as the year rolls through.
So I just want to confirm there's no concerns with us providing direction to our staff that for general fund requests, only requests that are tied to a revenue stream or mandated by law.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree to that, but I would want it to be clear to the electeds and the staff that we on the council think it's very important to find new revenue sources and that we will have opportunities this year to make those decisions. I just wouldn't want them to think that this is precluding that.
Now, I'll be very clear that I'll share with them what I'm sharing with you, which is we're looking at every single revenue stream. We're looking externally and internally at how we can maximize revenues. Yes.
Go ahead.
Just wanted to make sure too, and I don't know, maybe each individual separate elected will provide us information in different ways or whatnot, but they're still going to have the opportunity to come in front of us. And even though their budget request, because of the limitations that we put on it, given the circumstances, it's limited, but they'll have the opportunity to give their overall case and explain, all the things that, well, maybe they couldn't find a source of revenue to cover something, but this is a real need that they have for their department. So looking
Yes.
forward to those discussions.
Yeah, and I will say that will also be presented, and I haven't thought about logistics, but I will probably present that on behalf of our departments that are not under electeds, the same information. But yes, electeds will still have, because I want to make sure everybody's hearing it, because I know in the past there have been amendments to the budget, and I know other departments are like, well, man, if we went to council and banged on their door, they would have given it to us too as an amendment. So we just want to make sure that there's equity and making sure everybody has that same access. I would hope that maybe even during the budget work session, or if we need to do a separate work session where it's actually tied to those specific areas that to share what their needs are. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move on to counselor reports. Are there any reports this week?
Just have one report today, and actually from today earlier, I was able to attend the groundbreaking at Fort Vancouver for the Lynch Technical Trades Center. So we are moving very quickly in Clark County in developing alternative methods for people to have success coming right out of high school and to learn some of the trades. And just being in construction, I know that there is just such a shortage of people that have those skills. So it was an excellent opportunity. Thankful for the Lynch Foundation, for Community Foundation Northwest, and all the people. It takes a lot of people to get things like this to come forward. So there's a lot of work that was done, and I appreciate that. Our community will benefit greatly from it.
Great. I happen to be at Clark College in Ridgefield, their Ridgefield campus, for a presentation I was doing, but I got to see their shop that they've developed. It's pretty remarkable. And so it'll be training people in the trades. So pretty exciting. I have a little report. I also attended a groundbreaking. This was with our partnership with the Columbia River Estuary Partnership. a large project that has been coming together over a number of years. It's a total of $23 million from a number of sources. I know this previous council supported and lobbied the states for the Wetlands by Design, which contributed a good chunk of funds. Our component is the land itself with our Legacy Lands program. I think of the 5,500 acres that we've conserved, 1,700 of those acres are on the East Fork itself for to develop a greenway. So a lot of partnerships there. It's got landowners who live on the East Fork. Their property is going to be protected. Our shop's going to be protected by the county, and just some of the restoration economics that go along with this. The partnership anticipates there'll be 293 local jobs provided and add 40 million to the local economy. They'll have two building or construction periods this summer and next summer. So they anticipate, I guess that would be the fall of 26 that it would be completed. This was the Ridgefield pits that on the East Fork that a lot of past damage that was done to the environment. So very exciting. Okay, then let's. Oh, I'm very sorry. Yes, go ahead, Councilor Belcott.
I watched the CTRAN meeting last night, and it looks like TriMet has been invited to come speak over the summer about the ridership decline and financial decline as well to the CTRAN board. So that should be interesting.
Yes, that will be interesting. I think there was someone from TriMet in the audience, but they'll come prepared to present. Thank you. Any other council reports? Okay, we'll move on to work session requests.
Yes, this is part of our annual budget process, but Public Health comes to talk about the environmental public health fees, to review the current fee schedule for, again, in preparation for the annual budget. And any adjustment that council would make during this does require a code update and an ordinance. So this is just to go over the fee schedules and get council's direction to move forward for the necessary steps for the budget process.
Okay, are there any questions or concerns? Thumbs up on the work session? I see thumbs up all around. Sounds good. Thank you. Okay, item 8, policy updates. I'm thinking Jordan is coming online.
Good afternoon. So, no updates for you this afternoon.
What? No updates?
I know it's a rare event that I don't have a laundry list for you. But,
I was ready just to sit back and listen to all the updates, so I'm surprised. Okay, well, thank you for that. Then we'll move right into an announcement of our executive sessions. 9.1 pending litigation, RCW 42.30.110, paren 1, paren little I, for 15 minutes with after action, and 9.2 pending litigation, RCW 42.30.110, paren 1, paren little I, for 10 minutes. And we'll return with the after action. Thank you.
Can you please note the time that will be
I'm
returning?
sorry. So that would be a total of 25 minutes. So that would bring us to 2:45. No,
250. That's 250.
2:50.
Good afternoon. The chair has asked us to announce that executive session will be extended for an additional 10 minutes. And open session will reconvene at 3:00 p.m. Thank you.
No problem.
The chair has asked us to announce that executive session will be extended for an additional 10 minutes and open session will reconvene at 3:10. Thank you. Good afternoon. The chair has asked us to announce that executive session will be extended for an additional 5 minutes and open session will reconvene at 3:15. Thank you. The chair has asked us to announce that executive session will be extended for an additional 5 minutes and open session will reconvene at 3:20. Thank you.
Counselor is reconvening from our executive session. Is there a motion?
Chair,
Yes.
I move to approve the proposed settlement and release of all claims relating to the lawsuit entitled Susan Zawacki et al. Versus Clark County.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that concludes our meeting. Without objection, this meeting is adjourned.